Hello everyone. Today we are going to be going over how to start your character design, mainly talking about how to go through the sketching process and using simple shapes and forms to give your design some three-dimensionality, even if your design isn't realistic. And then also starting the line work for your design. So to start off, I'm just going to show you guys my mood board. So if you see here, I have already compiled some images and adjectives and just things that I want to convey in my design or explore in my design. So to start off, I am going to be doing Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. Of course, if you have your own character and story that you want to design a character for, you would have to do a little bit more work than if you're going to pick a character that already exists in a story that already exists. But just to start off, who is Dorothy? We know she's from The Wizard of Oz. I wrote down a few words that sort of describe her. So I would say one of her main components of her personality is that she's a big dreamer. She dreams of a place that's kind of far off and beyond Kansas, and that's how she ends up in the land of Oz. But she's also kind of shy and kind. She's not, I feel a really stereotypical tough character, but at the same time she's very bold, and I think part of the story is her learning to embrace that other side of her. I feel girls in particular are kind of taught to be kind of more shy and more kind and more polite, and I think this is a kind of story that kind of shows that you can be that, but also more. So I want to have those things still kind of show in my design, but I also want to create more of a modern design. This original Dorothy from the film version of Wizard of Oz is a very young Judy Garland, and I think the movie came out in maybe the 50s or 60s at the latest. So the style of the clothing and everything is very representative of that, and I kind of want to do something more set in maybe the past 10 to 20 years. There are some things that I don't want to change that much. So I feel Dorothy, her red shoes, even though she's not wearing them the whole time, are very iconic. That's something that's very recognizable for that character. And I feel this blue plaid dress is very important. And then I think also having her hair up is something that I want to maintain in my design. So I started with this list first, so even though I'm not having to do any writing because this story and character have already existed, I want to pick out some key things that I am planning to convey in my design, something that I want to change or keep. She's still going to be a young girl, but I want her to be more modern, and then also keep these specific 3 things that I feel if I took them away, it really wouldn't be that character anymore. So in my mood board, I have some things that I think are going to be helpful. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 different references. I could really have more. If I find that there's something else that I need reference for, I would add on to this. Your mood board, which is what this collection of images is called, should really be ever expanding depending on if you need more. I would say you need at least 5 to 7 images in your mood board, just because it's really valuable to use reference even when you're doing a more stylistic drawing. And everyone who does character design uses mood boards and references, even if they're not kind of directly copying the photos that are there, they're just using them as inspiration. So I have inspiration for like different types of like outfits, different types of like checker and plaid patterns, different red shoes, and then also different hairstyles that are like up but maybe not the exact same as the original, so like trying to like give it more of a modern twist. So I'm going to be looking at all of these references when I start sketching, which I'm about to do. So when you're working on your first round of sketches, you should always have your mood board open. I have a smaller iPad, not as new, so I'm gonna keep my mood board open on my phone, but if you want to have, you know, like a separate like screen up for your mood board or have it on the same canvas as your sketches, that's okay, but I'm gonna use a separate one. Starting with a big canvas that is in at least 300 dpi, I'm going to be sketching with the 6B pencil. It feels the closest to me to just like a regular pencil, and when I sketch, that's all I really want. So I'm going to try and do like at least 3 different designs here. I'm gonna start with kind of more of a simplified, like skeleton shape almost. Dorothy, a lot of times in the pictures you see of her, has like her little dog. His name is Toto, I think. But I don't think I'll have time to draw him today. If I were kind of working on this project a little longer, I might draw him in. She's always kind of like carrying this little wicker basket, and I think I'm gonna do like a messenger bag. I didn't put reference on here, I should have, but I do have some reference on my phone that I pulled of someone with a messenger bag. So just anytime, like, I feel like something that happens a lot when we are working on character design project at the studio is that you try to imagine too much, and it is a lot of imagining and a lot of work in a different way from like a more representational drawing, but at the same time, like, it's definitely okay to use reference. Okay, so going back to my reference, my mood board right here. So I think on this first one, I'm gonna keep it kind of simple. I want to think about like proportions. So like, I would say I want this character to feel more like a young person, like maybe like preteen or like early teen, so like maybe between the ages of like 12 and 15 at the oldest. So I want their proportions to feel around that. So right now she's about 5 heads high, which I think is good. Average height for, I think, a woman in America or the US is like 5'4", I think, and usually that's around like 5 to 5.5 heads tall. So right now she's maybe like on the shorter side, but that's okay because she might still be growing. I'm looking at maybe some of these hairstyles. As reference. So kind of like these like straight pigtails. And then maybe on this one I'll do like some Converse and just some pants, maybe like some high-waisted pants. Whenever you're designing something, it's really important to think about like parts of the drawing that are thick versus thin. So whenever you can find an opportunity to have things kind of go in and or out and like then back in and then out again, that is really valuable because it helps with the harmony of the design, having that balance between kind of like thicks and thins. This one doesn't really look like a Converse, so I need to make sure I kind of go back and look at my reference. Looks more like a tennis shoe. Gonna have this one be from more like front on. Something like that. Okay. So she's kind of like holding this messenger bag. Has this high-waisted pants. We want to make sure that our design still feels like it has form. So if you can see that I'm kind of drawing like some parts of these as like simple shapes and trying to think about how those shapes are like turning in space. So different shapes that you can use when you're sketching are sphere. So like sphere shape is usually for like the head. You can do a lot. You're going to be probably using a lot of like cylinder shapes, especially for like the arms and the legs. Sometimes cone shape, like depending on what you're drawing. Bean shapes are really valuable, or like almost like imagining that this is like sort of like a flour sack. But just using these types of simple shapes to build up your forms. You can do cube too. And thinking about how these forms kind of turn in space. So these are like simple forms to convey a sense of like kind of like 3D space that your figure is in. It's okay to like have flat designs, but I think for this particular project, Shu-Chih wants you guys to kind of like apply what we've learned in figure drawing to your design. And so it's kind of like the same principle of like shapes that we learn about when we're doing gesture drawing. Okay, I think for this one I just want her to have like a tank top on, and then start to think about her face. So like I've thought about these arms almost as like cylinder shapes. Her chest is kind of like more 3/4 view, kind of facing this way. And then thinking about like the form of this shoe, how it's like coming towards us, and like the top is round. Starting with the head, like making sure this neck feels like it's connecting to this like simplified torso shape. And then I can go back in and maybe refine this head I just did as sort of like a circle shape, but I might want it to have like more of like a cheek, so something more like this, like more of a bean shape. Maybe refine the center line of the face a bit more. I really like to do on my character designs the more like simplified like eyes for like the face, but you can use like whatever type of eyes you like. So I think this is gonna be like my first sketch. I'm not gonna color it or anything yet, just have some like blocking of maybe the hair, knowing that that's gonna be dark, and maybe put this pattern on her pants that's like gonna be the plaid pattern. And then I'm gonna start another sketch, so I'm gonna select these forms. Oops. And I'm gonna duplicate them. They're on a different layer now. I'm gonna delete the ones from the other layer. And then hide those. Then I'm gonna do another sketch. I kind of want to do overalls for one. And then looking at the reference for my hair. Kind of like have these little bun shapes in the back. I'm just drawing like the simple like head, rib cage, and pelvis, but like kind of just in a simplified way that I can get the pose, and then kind of feel like this one feels a little off balance. I don't really want her to feel super off balance because I feel like that's not really part of her personality too much. I want this one to almost feel like more like a dress, the shape of it, the overalls. This is more from like a view from the behind, so we can see like the back of the rib cage and the back of the pelvis and like her feet from like the back. I'm trying to keep this drawing around the same size. I don't know if I want to change her height that much. I really don't want her to feel too small. Okay. Starting to draw out like the forms of the arms, the hands. I guess I kind of drew her from a view in this one that you wouldn't see the overalls as much, but that's okay. Drawing out the feet, looking at maybe these boots. Boots might be fun. Maybe showing this one from the side, and this one's kind of like more from the back view, like back sort of foot. I like the idea of her having a bag, but maybe she doesn't need one in this design. Like maybe it's a little less work for me. I'm trying to show how forms are happening in front of each other. So like this pant leg is of the overalls is like happening in front of this one. And kind of like shade in to show like these forms are slightly behind. Maybe give her a sleeve here. Want to think about maybe how the sleeve is like wrapping around the arm. And again, this one's like more in the back, and then gonna work on the face a little bit, so she's kind of turning her back and head back and smiling. This face I did is like a bit more square. Some of these square features I feel like I sort of like, and then she has these kind of little bun shapes, and then her neck connecting to the head. This is another like 3/4 view, like neither of these I drew from like a front on view, so maybe give her like slightly bigger eyes in this one. Bigger eyebrows. Think about these are just sketches, so like later on I'll take maybe one of these sketches that I like the best and do like a finished line work version of it. So she kind of has like a little nose. Maybe I'll give her like a longer nose. I want these overalls to feel more like they're wrapping around like the arm in the front, so I think I'm gonna make them skinnier, the straps, and then show it kind of wrapping around the arm there. So before it was just kind of like flush to like the shoulder, but I'm trying to find ways to like break up the design a little bit more. Maybe you give her a little like collar. They're supposed to be overalls, so I'm just gonna like erase that like middle part because that would all sort of be connected. And then sometimes maybe overalls have like little like belt line. Maybe I'll give her a little belt. Maybe we can see some of the ties on the shoes. Kind of want her to have like dark hair, so I'm just gonna like shade in the parts of the hair that are dark, just so I can get like a little bit of value, because value is most important. Like color is valuable and important as well, but also like you're gonna be able to show more if you have like kind of separation of values from like light and dark happening in the value range than if your colors are kind of like all muddy and not showing different like value shifts. I want her to like have these like kind of plaid, like blue plaid, like throughout whatever design I do, so I'm always gonna have like that plaid. So she's kind of turning away from us. If I were to draw over these forms, Let me draw her hand back on. Thinking about like the forms, which I started off with, but like just want to show you guys that I'm still trying to like think about that, you know, and like how those forms are turning and like connecting to each other. And like even if I wasn't drawing the leg, like to make sure that the leg can like fit into that shape and like have like a 3D structure. Same thing for this one, even if I'm not drawing out the legs, sometimes it helps to make sure like, could a leg fit under here? Does it make sense anatomically? Can it make sense anatomically? And if it can't, you probably need to like make some adjustments, because you always wanted to have like some sense of like form, even if it's not super realistic. So okay, I'm gonna do one more sketch. I think for character design, it's really good to do different types of sketches. Like these characters that I just drew, like they don't look super different. Like they kind of have an idea that I'm trying to show in all of the designs that I do. But it's different enough that I'm like trying to think about different, just like ways that the character like can be dressed, or like shapes happening. Right now I feel like even though the pants are different here and they're kind of the same shape, so I sort of want to do one that's more like of a different shape. So I think I'm gonna try on the last one. To have, maybe I'll have her sitting. Maybe I'll have her head a bit taller. Gonna have maybe, gonna like the Converse like style of shoe better than the boot. So kind of like the higher, like high tops. Maybe have some socks. She kind of has socks on the original design in her shoes, so it might be fun to like have that still. But yeah, I kind of like the Converse design, so I'm gonna stick with that one. Gonna make some baggier pants. Try to think about how the legs are connecting to the pelvis there. should probably look up a reference for like a sitting pose if I want to do it. I feel like it's not as like correct as I would want it to be. Doesn't really look like it's sitting to me. Might have to readjust some parts. Trying to have her like sort of sitting and having her elbow on the chair, sort of. Like the back of the chair. Like sort of like she's daydreaming or something. Like maybe looking out like the window, wishing to see she was somewhere else. Kind of get a different perspective on the window. The chair maybe. Maybe I might draw this one also as sort of like overalls, but like just have the overall shape be different. Because kind of the way her dress is in the original, it's kind of like wrapped around like the front. I kind of like the low front that it has like in the original, so I'm gonna try to show that in this one. I'm gonna have to show maybe in this one, like I want to have like more of like a kind of like sad or like longing face, like she wants to kind of be free. And then I think in this one I'm gonna do the hair like this, where it's like kind of a ponytail type, like hair in the back. This one I kind of like she kind of has I want to give her like a longer face, and I kind of like that. Like the longer face shape, like a longer like chin and jaw. So far, I think I actually like this one the best. It is a kind of complicated pose I chose, but that's okay. I think this one shows like a little bit more, something like about it has more personality to me. Character design is something that you have to sort of stay in practice with, just like any other type of like art. And it's not like always gonna come super like intuitively, so you kind of just have to work through like different like iterations of the design to sort of like get the style and everything that you want to convey. I'm trying to do the low kind of shirt front for the overalls like in the original design. And then she can be wearing like just like a t-shirt underneath. Maybe her dog is in this one. I don't know. Yeah, I feel like I'm starting to like this design the best, even though I probably want to have, for my model sheet, like I would want to do more drawings of her, like standing and maybe like having different expressions or something, but I think I like this one overall. Maybe I'll have the hand be like on her face instead of like wrapped up, like sort of the palm of her hand and then her fingers starting to show. I think this arm would probably be too short in comparison to like how tall the rest of the body is. So that's something that I would want to like figure out later on too, if I decided like that I like this design, just to make sure that everything makes sense. I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger. Use the select tool instead of redrawing it and just kind of like try to make it a bit more like proportional. yeah, I think I kind of am liking this one the best. I like the shape of the pants, and I like the low kind of overall shape that sort of mimics the dress and like the original design. So I think if I were to keep going with this, I would just try to do more drawings of her. So like once I feel like I like a design pretty well, it's not enough just to like be like, oh, I picked this one and like I'm gonna just do that one and like start the final model sheet. You should kind of do like more drawings of the character to like explore what they look like, because this is only kind of one view of her, and I wouldn't want to just like start the final without having more of an idea of what she looks like. I'm gonna go ahead and start doing the final line work over this, even though like I wouldn't suggest to use like this drawing that I just did. I think is like, it's okay. I think I would maybe want to take a picture of reference to like have that shows like someone sitting like this instead of just imagining it completely from my head. And then I would also just want to do more drawings of this character in general, just to like make sure I know exactly like what I want her to look like. But I'm gonna go ahead and do the final line work on top of it just to show you guys how like you would approach that. And before I do that, I'm just gonna kind of draw through and show you like the forms that are happening on this. So like she kind of has like more of an oval head compared to the other ones. Like these ones, this one's more of like kind of like a square and circle, and this one's more of like just a circle. And then this oval head is very like 3/4 view. So like we can see like some of like the side of the head and the back of the head. I tend to like characters that like have sort of like high waist shapes, which is something like, it can be bad sometimes where it's like you tend to draw things a certain way, but also at the same time it can show like your style and like what you're interested in. So it's not always like good or bad. But right now I'm just drawing out like to show you guys like the forms of her body, how like the neck is connecting on top of the torso, how the arms are connecting to those shapes. Showing her legs, this is like a really poofy outfit, so I just want to imagine like what the legs would look like underneath that, just to make sure that like there's some reality to it. It's really good to draw through like your drawings just to show the forms. So this leg looks like it might be a little too short compared to like the other one. Like I have it a bit too foreshortened. So I think I would maybe want to draw the knee out like lower on the final. I think that's how I want it. Sort of like that. So like it's kind of moving down. And I'm kind of just imagining this mostly on my head because I've had like a bit more practice than probably most of you guys drawing like from my imagination. But again, like for just the sake of like to make it easier on yourself, like it's always good to use a reference. So if you feel like you're having a hard time and like the forms aren't really reading or like showing, then it's always good to have reference. So I kind of have these forms drawn out, and I'm gonna go ahead and do the final line work now. A lot of you guys sort of feel, I feel like, confused or unsure what type of brush to use in Procreate. I feel like it's just finding something that you like, and making sure like that you feel comfortable using it. If you feel like the brush you pick feels awkward or whatever, you wouldn't want to use that. So I think I'm going to use this syrup brush under like the ink page, because I like that brush. I'm going to have some thicker line work around curves. That's like pretty common. I think I'm gonna try to have like a bit more of an expressive line weight and not have it be just like flat. Kind of see how this looks without stuff under it. I think the line around the face might be a bit too thick, but if you find that you like have a hard time with like line weight and like consistency, your character doesn't have to have a line weight like at all. Like in fact, when you're sketching at stuff, it may be good to just like experiment with like if you like line weight or not, and then if like you figure out like, oh, I feel like that's something I struggle with, or maybe like I don't really understand that much, then just use like a consistent line weight. Find a pen that doesn't have that's not like affected like pressure wise by like the way you're pressing your pen into the tablet. Trying to think about if I want it to look more like this image than I drew it. I think I'll give her like a thick ponytail. Showing the sleeve kind of wrap around the arm a bit. And then gotta think about these straps and how they're wrapping around. Maybe like around the neck. Don't really like how this hand turned out, so I might go back and I think I want to show the pinky finger a bit more and maybe like a little bit like the other finger. Might have some just dark shadow shapes where like there's some overlap happening. That might be something that I do in my line work. Kind of take a look at how this is feeling. I kind of like how it looks so far. The shapes and stuff. Make sure this feels like it's wrapping around her body and like it's not too flat. I might have this shape of the overalls kind of like pop off a little bit off her body, so it looks like there's more like form. I drew it kind of flat to her body in this sketch, but I kind of wanted to have a little bit more form. So see how now it looks like it's sort of like turning around the body a bit. Whoops. Kind of chose to draw this chair out, so I have to like have it in a little bit, but I need to get reference for that. I'm going to show the pant leg and the leg kind of wrapping around the bottom of the chair. Remember I said I'm gonna have this pant leg come like a little bit closer to the knee here, and then same thing for this one. So it looks like these pant legs are kind of like wrapping around the legs a little bit more. Not just kind of like following zero anatomy. Try to have the leg come out where I drew it. I'm gonna have her sock shape kind of come off her leg a little bit, and then for the shoe, I need to look at reference again. This is more of like a view from the front of the Converse, so they don't have as big of a lip as I was drawing. It's kind of like tighter to the shoe or the sock. Kind of want to give that one a little bit more attention later, but I think like the perspective on it's off. But I think it's okay for now. I'm gonna take another look at how things feel. Without any of the underdrawing. I kind of need to figure out the socks a bit more in relation to the shoes because I feel like I haven't figured that out. But that's why like this drawing that I just did, it probably wouldn't be for like the final. It would be more just like to explore what this character looks like and, you know, who she is and how she feels. I have to draw out this chair, probably, maybe make it one of those chairs that has like the center base. But all of that would still kind of need to be worked out, and like especially the perspective of like the chair and stuff. I feel like I don't have quite right. Like I think the center of it would need to be more off and everything. Probably would draw that separately. Think about the perspective of the chair and stuff. It'd probably be something like that. If I was drawing through it. So I probably wouldn't see much of like the bottom. And then if I wanted to add like the dog or the window or anything, I could do that. And also the next step like will be to do more drawings and like more drawings of this character from like different angles and stuff to make sure like I have everything drawn out correctly and that I am able to replicate this character. The most important part about character design is that you're kind of creating a map for other artists to use and to know like how to draw this character, even if you're not giving them directions. So if you finish your character design project and someone isn't able to kind of see how to draw this character over and over again correctly, then you have to kind of readjust. But this would need a little bit more work on like the cleanliness of my lines and like making sure everything is consistent. I would have to decide like if I want there to be gaps in my lines. So like right now I have a lot of gaps in my lines. I'd have to decide if that's something that like I want, like do I want to have those gaps in the lines, or do I want them to be all closed? Do I like how loose my line work is? Do I want it to be loose? Do I want it to be more like consistent? All of that stuff that you have to figure out before you would actually start on like the final model sheet, which I have another video that I made for you guys last year on starting on the final model sheet. So this is more just going over like the sketching process and all of that. Maybe the next step after this is I would maybe start wanting to figure out like some of the color of this character and what that looks like, so I could start to put that in. But color comes sort of almost last. You don't want to start color too soon because it is important, but like how I want the character to look overall is more important. The color is sort of like an additional detail, and it's valuable, but not the most valuable part of the design. So I could start to like do loose block ends of color. I think sometimes guys will get like focused on like when you're sketching and stuff, making everything just like completely perfect, and it doesn't have to be perfect until the final model sheet. So when you guys are like kind of figuring out colors and stuff roughly, it can be, you know, just quick. And like you can clean stuff up later, but just trying to get like big statements in before you do any small stuff. Use a combination of like selection tool and also like shading in depending on like how big of an area you're filling. Think about later on, like if you have pattern, like how that's gonna wrap around like the forms. I probably want to go over this more cleanly, like for like the final design of like where these like stripes are and stuff, but can just sort of do like a simple one for now. Anyways, that's kind of just like a quick example of like how to start coloring. But mostly this was just for sketching. You can see how we ended up with sort of like a more finished line work version from the originals, which was just sketches. Different like sketch designs, thinking about how many high she is, thinking about the forms that were happening underneath the drawings, using our references, and trying to put that all together to eventually end up with something like a little bit more complete. So hopefully that helps you guys, and again, there is still the other video if you haven't watched it or if you don't remember it, talking more about the design process and everything. But thank you, and hope this helps you guys.